The sounds of silence. Oh my. With the help of God now for 35 years or more, I spend, well, basically an hour every day in front of the tabernacle, in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And it's a silent time because I'm not speaking out loud. But I am reading the Psalms, the Divine Office, and I say little bits and pieces of prayers. So the sounds of silence. Now there's a movie out there, or there's a song, "Hello Darkness, my old friend, I come to speak with you again." Something about the sounds of silence. But however, silence speaks. Now you can have a hostile silence, you know. We're not talking to one another. I'm mad at so-and-so. There's a book out there, again, I'm not recommending it, just to tell you about it, called The Diary of a Country Priest. And I can't think of the author, but it's set in France, in a small village. And the parish priest of the small village, he's young, he's in his 30s. And interesting enough, his parishioners hate him. And he's a very good priest, which is interesting. Of course, the people of the village hate one another as well. But they particularly hate the priest, I suppose, because, I don't know, because he's so good, apparently he's a reminder of them, of their own lack of goodness, or their inability to live loving lives with one another. The priest has a stomach problem. Don't know what it was, but he used to, in the story, he used to dip bread. This is what he eat. He eat bread every day, and he dipped it in wine, and would eat the bread in that manner, and his stomach could hold it down, you know. And of course, what did they do when they knew that about him? Well, the parish priest is a drunk. He wasn't, of course, but apparently they hated his sermons because he was always encouraging them to be like Christ, to be holy in his sight, to be blameless, to be full of love. They didn't want to hear about it. So he does his visits around his parish, and one particular day he goes to this home where there's a mother and her daughter, just those two in the house. And the daughter doesn't speak to the mother, and the mother doesn't speak to the daughter. It's a hostile place. And they manage to live like as if they were in two separate apartments. And anyway, he goes, "The blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." And it was a waste of time again. They have their hatreds, and they're not about to give them up. So on the way back from the house, and this influenced me a great deal, and I'm talking about the sounds of silence. It mightn't appear so, but on the way home one day, he took a shortcut through an alley to get to the parish house, and he got deathly sick again. And the best he could do at that moment was he slid himself down a wall and was sitting on the ground, you know, waiting for the nausea to pass and the lightheadedness. While he was sitting on the ground, again silently, yet inside himself, he said to the Lord, I don't know how to give myself to you, but you know how to take me. And the greatest light came on in my mind at that time. When I read this, I don't know how to be a saint, but you can make me one. was marvelous that God was the prime mover. The same God who created the heavens and the earth will have to make me holy. That was a diary of a country priest. Okay, I'm sorry I can't remember the name, but it was written in the 1900s someplace. I'm sure you could Google it if you knew how. And then there's another thing that had to do with silence, had a profound influence on me. There's a play out there called The Man for All Seasons by Robert Bolt. I don't know this, I think Robert Bolt was Jewish, was not a Christian, and the play he wrote, The Man for All Seasons, is primarily about the lawyer Saint Thomas More, and the time is the time of Henry VIII. Henry VIII, I am Henry VIII. That Henry VIII. Henry VIII died of syphilis. So Henry VIII was obsessed with having children so that they could inherit the royal throne after Henry died. And when his first wife, who was married sacramentally, Henry VIII was Catholic and married a Catholic woman, somebody Aragon of Spain. She had no child. And Henry, in some way, shape, or form, in the play, divorced his wife. And now he got a bit of a problem here. When you marry as a Catholic, you're married by God. You're married in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You may not divorce your wife. Remember the scribes and the Pharisees said, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? And Jesus said, no, it's not. When God made them, he made them male and female. A man should leave his father and mother and cling to his wife. What God has joined, men must not separate. The Pharisees want to divorce their women. So Henry VIII wants to divorce this wife so that he could have another wife who would give him a male heir. And that's the whole trauma of the 1500s. And so into this comes, and he does. And he when the Pope won't grant him an annulment of his first marriage, he declared himself head of the Church of England. I'm the Pope now of England. And so he went on to have, I think, 5 or 6 wives eventually. The one who did not agree at all with what Henry was doing was Thomas More, the Lord Chancellor of England, very close to Henry. And Henry, above all people, wanted Thomas More's approval of what he was doing. But Thomas More remained silent. He suffered, like a lot of Catholics did, with the fact that Henry VIII had declared himself head of the church, and some of them were driven underground who remained Catholic and would not accept Henry. But More said nothing about it. He continued his work as chancellor. But there wasn't a man in the world who didn't know what Thomas More was thinking, that he completely disapproved of what the king had done, but he didn't say so. So he eventually ends up on trial, having spent some months in the Tower of London as a prisoner. And, Henry did everything he could and to get More to come over, come with us. So anyway, he's in the Tower of London. And then at his trial, Cromwell, one of the lawyers at his trial, came up with a famous speech about silence. Thomas More had said nothing, so he said, Thomas Cromwell or something like that. He said, so visualize a courtroom. Moore is sitting in the dock like I'm sitting here. Cromwell is here, the prosecuting attorney. All around are the lords of the realm. And so Cromwell begins his accusation by saying, but, he said, but, gentlemen of the jury, there are many kinds of silence. Consider first the silence of a man when he is dead. You go into the room where he's lying and you listen. What do you hear? Nothing. This is silence, pure and simple. Consider now another type of silence. Supposing I go to draw a dagger from my sleeve and I attempt to kill the prisoner here in front of me, and your lordships, instead of calling for me to cease, sat silent. Your silence betokened. You agreed with what I was doing. You did not cry out. Now, he said, consider the nature of the prisoner's silence, Thomas More. Is there a man in Europe? Is there a man in the whole world who does not know what Thomas More thinks? This is not silence. This is More's most eloquent denial. It bellows up and down Europe. There's the silence then. It bellowed up and down Europe. Now I'll segue again, please, because as a nation and as a universe, we're on the eve of destruction. You know, Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again in glory. He shall indeed be with us soon to judge the living and the dead. But there's a silence sweeping the world now, and it's always the same silence. It's the silence about the aborted children. In the 60 years of the last century, and I don't even know what this figure means, but we have slaughtered 3 billion babies. And for the most part, the world is silent. They're even promoting it. Pope Benedict, God rest his soul, in the vision, speaking to the governments of the world that were promoting abortion, he said that the chairs of government around the world are sticky with blood. So whether it's a Republican or whether it's a Democrat or whether it's a Russian premier or whatever, the governing bodies of France who promote abortion, their government seats are sticky with blood. And what are we doing, the rest of the world, in the face of it? We sit silent. Our silence betokens. Our silence betokens. We agree. Now, I will point to finally an apocalyptic sign. You don't have to go along with this, but the 2 great interventions of God in history before our time had to do with the death of children. At the time of Moses, Herod, king of Egypt, had decreed that all the male children born to Jewish families were to be destroyed. They were to be thrown into the river Nile. They would be given over to the crocodiles. So, and what happened? How was the deliverer? Well, what happened was God raised up Moses, who was both Jewish and a prince of Egypt, raised in Pharaoh's palace, and he called him to lead the Jewish people, the chosen people of God, to this day, the chosen people of God, to lead them out in the Exodus, where they passed through the Red Sea into freedom in the Sinai desert. They're living on the edge of the Sinai desert today as well. And again, the Moses, the deliverer. Same thing happened at the time of Jesus. In Bethlehem of Judea, Mary, brought forth her firstborn and laid him in a manger. King of kings and Lord of lords. All the prophecies spoke about him before he ever existed. And Herod sent out his soldiers to try to kill the Christ child. And in the process of trying to do that, he killed all the male children in the land of Israel. But Joseph and Mary and the baby escaped down into Egypt. It's interesting, the Jewish nation in the person of Mary, Joseph, and the baby are going down into Egypt again. And then 12 years later, there's another exodus. Jesus, the new Adam, and Joseph and Mary come up out of the land of Egypt. So there's many silences then, please. And I don't know what to do about it. We've reached a point where people like me, for instance, if we were to come out and say up clearly, you're voting for men and women who will not alone keep abortion going in the United States, but will even expand it, that it could be turned over to the civil authorities. But what I do is this, I make us aware of it, and I ask all of us in season and out of season to pray the Fatima prayer, to pray for the governments of the world who are shedding the blood of the innocent in season and out of season. O my Jesus, forgive us our sins, save us from the fires of hell, lead all souls to heaven, especially those in most need of thy mercy. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.